lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share.
Both vice presidential nominees discussing the affordability crisis here in this country.
Yeah, that conversation taking up much of the debate as Americans and South Floridians specifically are struggling to navigate it all. CBS News Miami's Jim DeFede joins us now to break it all down. And Jim, the economy top of mind for us here in South Floridians. Home prices are extremely high. So how do you think both candidates did, the VP candidates here, in discussing these important issues?
So what they did was pretty much parrot the lines of the top of the ticket. Donald Trump obviously has a position that the economy was good when he was in office, and JD Vance said if you want to return to those Donald Trump days, then you need to vote for him. And again, Tim Walz pretty much just expressed the views of Kamala Harris, talking about the $6,000 child tax credit, and generally, you know, trying to make the argument that the economy was improving in a lot of ways. What you really saw last night were two candidates who were sort of trying to play to that middle, trying to play to that very narrow band. And certainly for JD Vance, I think he had a much better night than Tim Walz in overall, because I think he was able to present a more affable effect of himself. He rehabbed his image to a fair amount.
Yeah, I think a lot of the folks looking at this were saying that JD Vance did have a pretty good night. But let me ask you about this issue that really hits close to home for Floridians, and that is the fight for abortion rights. JD Vance really reiterating that he believes that Americans do not trust Republicans on this issue and that they need to change that. But is that enough of an answer for voters?
Yeah, this was one of the more fascinating moments of the debate, was when JD Vance basically tried to, exactly what I was saying a second ago, round off some of the harder edges. You know, when he says, you can't, you know, I know you don't trust Republicans, but we need to do a better job of it. You know, he's talking about his own position. He's trying to rewrite history a little bit in terms of what he has supported, you know, in terms of voting for a national abortion ban, to the issues that Donald Trump has said he would do as well. So this is clearly, when I was saying a second ago how they were playing to the middle, this is a perfect example. I think, you know, there's really just 2 or 3% undecided out there, and abortion is a key issue for them. They tend to lean towards supporting a woman's right to have control over her body. And so you hear in the debate last night, JD Vance trying to shift the Republican position ever so slightly into a more moderate position. Whether or not voters will believe that is a whole other story.
Yeah, so abortion, of course, always a really hot button issue, but there's also been a lot of talk about this, a lot of back and forth last night over comments about Haitian migrants eating cats and dogs. So before we get to you, Jim, we want to take a listen to this.
Talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it.
And he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes.
Well, we have in the past week since this happened, we've seen South Florida Haitians come out in full force against those accusations we heard during the presidential debate. So will this continue to be a talker in this election cycle, Jim?
I think it will be, in large part because the Trump campaign believes immigration is a winning issue for them. I think when you look at last night's debate, I think where JD Vance did best was on issues surrounding the economy and immigration. And I thought where Tim Walz did best was when it talked about whether it was guns or the threat to democracy and the peaceful transition of power and abortion. And I think that's really where the country is in terms of trying to decide between those two candidates. Where do you place your more strength? Now, on the Haitian issue, that was, you know, again, they are leaning into this heavily. And that was one of the moments as well that sparked real controversy because the anchors, the moderators for the debate, properly pointed out that, in fact, those are not illegal immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, that those Haitians are here under temporary protected status, which means they are here legally. And in many ways, it's always important to remind folks that the folks in Springfield actually wanted folks to fill those jobs, and the workers there are very happy. Yes, there are challenges, but nobody really addressed the challenges that JD Vance was talking about when a community absorbs a large number of immigrants, and that's the discussion that we should be having, not vilifying them.
Yeah, it kind of stayed surface level, and we'll see if it even moves the needle here. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate it.
Yeah.